Yo, what's up guys, Alf here, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to hit rank 1 with on the Arena ladder. As you can see from the screenshot here, I'm currently 47-6 with this deck, so it's been performing really well for me. And now before I get into it, there's going to be an MTG zone link down in the description. If you click on that, we'll have the full deck list there that you can import into Arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. And I also want to point out that Alchemy is going to go under rotation in about a week and a half, so on September 5th when Worlds of Eldraine comes out, Alchemy will be rotating, and a number of cards in this deck will be going with rotation, so a lot of the key cards in the deck like Shieldred, One Ring and Bowmasters are still going to be legal, and they're still going to be the most powerful cards in the format. Stuff like Juggernaut Peddler, Diabolic Intent and Eternal Wanderer is still going to be about as well, but we do lose Cursebound Witch, Shambling Ghast and Rite of Oblivion, all of which are quite key players in this deck, so I can't guarantee that this particular deck will still be viable after rotation, so definitely bear that in mind if you're thinking of crafting it. Now, as I said, Shieldred, One Ring and Bowmasters and, maybe like Peddler and some other stuff in the deck, I imagine will still be viable, but, definitely bear that in mind. This particular build, or this exact build of the deck, will only be legal for about a week and a half. But anyway, with that all out of the way, this is my white-black Diabolic Intent Ring mid-range deck in Alchemy. So, I've been playing a ton of Alchemy recently, I think the format has become a lot more interesting since Crucius and Fable got hit, and this has definitely been the deck out of all the ones that I've tried that I've had the most consistent success with. So, at its core, this is definitely a Shieldred One Ring deck. I still think Shieldred plus the One Ring is by far the most powerful thing to be doing in the format, and I think this is probably the deck that not only sets up Shieldred plus One Ring the most consistently, but can also really make use of it once we have it online. So, One Ring, if you've played the format, you know what this card is by now. Gives you protection the turn it comes down, and then just completely snowballs the game in terms of card advantage in your favour, completely pulls your head, and most decks in the format right now are trying to beat you on value. There's very few aggro decks, and there's only really one combo deck in the format in the Ratted Rabbit combo, so if you can get your One Ring online, you're going to get pull ahead against the vast majority of decks. And then Shieldred, one of the most generically powerful creatures in the format. If you can get it to stick, it just snowballs the game in your favour, and then it's obviously absolutely insane when you have your ring set up, because it basically completely mitigates any of the downsides, because you just gain life whenever you draw cards off the One Ring, and is also really good against opposing One Rings as well, because it obviously deals the opponent damage and applies pressure to their life total. So this is obviously a really sick setup. And then alongside the core of Shieldred plus the One Ring, the main innovations in this deck are Diabolic Intent and Rite of Oblivion, both 2-mana sorceries that require us to sacrifice creatures, but both with really powerful effects. So Diabolic Intent is really sick in this deck because it enables us to very consistently find Shieldred plus the One Ring. I think one of the big weaknesses of a lot of Ring Shieldred decks in the format is that they don't really have great ways to find the Ring or Shieldred, and so the disparity in power level of their hands, where they just happen to have the One Ring, and hands where they have to dig towards it, are night and day really. And Diabolic Intent is so good at consistently finding us the One Ring, then consistently finding us Shieldred if we have it, so we can set this up as our engine way more consistently. Now obviously the big drawback of Diabolic Intent is that you do need a creature to sacrifice, but we have loads of ways to set that up. We have 16 cheap creatures in the deck in Cursebound Witch, Shambling Ghast, Orcish Bowmasters and Juggernaut Peddler, 12 of which also produce a second body. There's a ton of cheap creatures that we can get off the Cursebound Witch spellbook, so we can get 2 creatures off that. Shambling Ghast also produces a treasure token that we can sack to Rite of Oblivion, and Orcish Bowmasters produces 2 bodies as well. So we have a ton of cheap creatures in the deck to enable Diabolic Intent. I don't think this card is really viable without that, but outside of tutoring for Shieldred or the One Ring, which is the main use of the card, we can also tutor for Rite of Oblivion, which is just the best removal spell in the deck. We also have a single copy of Eternal Wanderer, which acts as both kind of a board sweeper and another top-end threat as well. And then we also have a single copy of Stone of Erech here, which is mainly here for the Ratted Rabbit combo. So like I mentioned, the vast majority of decks in the format right now are trying to win on value. They're trying to pull ahead on card advantage and then win from that position. The Ratted Rabbit combo is the only deck in the format really. There are some other more fringe combo decks, but that's the main combo deck that doesn't necessarily need to win on card advantage or by attacking. I think this deck, because we have Shieldred plus the One Ring, and we can set it up consistently off intent, is really good at winning against decks that are trying to outvalue you and winning against decks that are trying to beat you in combat. But against the combo decks, we only have 4 removal spells in the whole deck. Well, I guess Eternal Wanderer also counts, so having access to the single copy of Stone of Erech basically just ensures that we don't get cheesed out game 1 by the Ratted Rabbit combo, right? We can just tutor this up, get Stone of Erech in play, stop them from beating us with the combo, and then they have to beat us on value, which is really hard to do because we have the One Ring plus Shieldred. And then we also have a bunch of tutor targets in the sideboard for specific matchups that I'll get to in a minute, but Diabolic Intent is just so sick at ensuring that we can set up Ring Plus Shieldred, ensure that we have, the best engine in the whole format online, and then also gives us really good flexibility in the sideboard that I'll get to in a minute as well. Then the second really sweet card in this deck is Rite of Oblivion. So this is such a sick removal spell, and this card has really been pulling its weight in testing. So not only is this a clean answer for everything, it can kill creatures like opposing Shieldreds or Bowmasters, which can be a problem with our One Ring, obviously, but the ability for this to take out opposing One Rings is really important. The ability for this to take out Planeswalkers is really important, like Tasha and opposing Eternal Wanderers, and also the ability for it to take out artifacts against Anvil or enchantments against the ramp deck like Leyline Binding is really sick. So Rite of Oblivion just acts as a catch-all answer to everything, and then it obviously has flashback as well, so we get two, this basically acts as a 2-for-1 in most situations, and as I mentioned, a lot of our creatures can produce a second body for us to flash, get the flashback off. As I mentioned, there's a ton of cheap creatures that we can get off the Curse Spellwitch spellbook. Shambling Ghast producing a treasure token is another thing that we can sacrifice, because we don't need to sacrifice a creature, we can sacrifice any non-land permanent, so we can sack the treasure tokens to get the flashback off Rite of Oblivion. Obviously, Bowmasters produces 2 bodies, so we can use both of them for the Rite of Oblivion as well, and Peddler. And the other really nice thing about Rite of Oblivion is we can also use it to sacrifice our One Ring. So if we're taking too much damage off it, Rite of Oblivion acting as another way to just get rid of it so we don't get burnt out is really nice as well. So Rite of Oblivion just acts as such a sick catch-all answer, and there's also another card that I fetch off Diabolic Intent if I do need to interact with the opponent. Then next up we'll have a look at the cheap creatures that we've got as enablers for Rite of Oblivion and Diabolic Intent. Starting off here with Cursebound Witch. So this is a really nice one because it basically just gets us value when we use it with our Intent or Rite of Oblivion, and there are a decent number of good cards to get off this. So as I mentioned, oftentimes you want to get the cheap creatures like Cauldron Familiar, Black Cat, Sorcerer's Broom, and Unwilling Ingredient as ways to, ensure that you have a second body for any future Diabolic Intent or Rite of Oblivions that you get. And then you also get, Witch's Vengeance acts as a nice removal spell, specifically very good against Herd Migration if you're up against the ramp deck. Then you've got Witch's Oven and, Witch's Cauldron as decent sacrifice outlets if you have a very creature-heavy draw. And then the other nice upside, we can get a land off it, which comes up in certain situations, but the enchantments here are also really nice in the mid to late game once we have access to a lot of mana. So if we are against one of those slower grindier decks, getting stuff like Curse of Leeches or let me find it here. Cruel Reality, once we have a lot of mana, is very good. Torment of Scarabs can also be good. So specifically against the grindier decks, getting access to cheap creatures in the early game to enable us to sacrifice to later Diabolic Intent and Rite of Oblivions is nice, and then just getting those enchantments as the game goes on allows us to beat those grindier, slower decks as well, which is really nice. Then Shambling Ghast, this is the sickest enabler in the deck, and the reason why Shambling Ghast is so good is because it enables very consistent turn 3 the One Rings, because if we go Shambling Ghast on turn 1 and then Diabolic Intent on turn 2, we can tutor up the One Ring, use Shambling Ghast to get a treasure token, and then as long as we have our third land in hand, we can cast the One Ring. So we can very consistently set up turn 3 the One Ring, which is so powerful. And if we already have the One Ring in hand, we can use Diabolic Intent to find that third land if we need. We can use it to find Shieldred if we need. We can also find it to find, a backup One Ring if we're worried about discard spells or the opponent having an immediate answer like a Leyline Binding. So Shambling Ghast with the treasure, setting up a turn 3 One Ring is so powerful. And I'll basically snap keep any hand that has Shambling Ghast into Diabolic Intent because this is such a strong curve out. And getting the ring down on turn 3, especially when you're on the play, is so strong against basically every deck in the format. Then the other death trigger, being able to deal a creature -1/-1, is obviously firstly very relevant against Bowmasters. We are a deck that is quite reliant on One Ring, so having additional ways to deal with Bowmasters outside of our own Bowmasters is really nice. So having Shambling Ghast as a way to pick off opposing Bowmasters is really nice, but in general it just makes combat really difficult for the opponent, right? Especially if we give them Juggernauts off the Peddler. We can often just use Shambling Ghast as a 2/2 because it obviously deals 1 damage, and then it can give the Juggernaut -1/-1 when it dies. So Shambling Ghast, such a flexible card, and even if we don't need to use the -1/-1, the treasure is always useful, particularly once we start drawing off the One Ring. Once we start getting the One Ring online, mana is often a choke point, so getting that additional treasure as additional mana is really good. So Shambling Ghast, just the best enabler in the deck, and is one of the reasons why I'm a bit skeptical that this particular build will be viable after rotation, because Shambling Ghast is such a sick card in the deck. But I do think with Wilds of Eldraine coming out, that Beseech the Mirror, I think is what it's called, is going to kind of replace Diabolic Intent in these sort of shells anyway. But in this particular deck, Shambling Ghast is such a strong card. Then obviously we've got Orcish Bowmasters, one of the best cards in the format, and very good in this deck. Well, it's just very good in the format in general because it punishes opposing 1-rings, picks off any 1 toughness creatures like opposing Bowmasters, and it's just a generically good card in and of its own right. As I mentioned, we are a 1-ring deck, so being able to kill opposing Bowmasters is very important, or that can punish our rings. So having Bowmasters as an answer for the opponents is very nice. But, you know, as I mentioned, we are a kind of a sacrifice synergy deck, so we're always going to make use of the amass token with stuff like Diabolic Intent and Rite of Oblivion. Produces 2 bodies, so it gives us 2 activations of these sacrifice cards as well. So Bowmasters, one of the best cards in the format, and I think this is one of the best homes to enable Bowmasters as well. And then we've got 4 copies of Juggernaut Peddler, which is another one of the cards that I think is, you know, probably one of the most underrated cards in the format. This is so good. So it's basically a Thoughtseize on a body that does give the opponent a Juggernaut, but it exiles the card from their hand rather than discarding it, which can be a nice upside in certain scenarios, and is just really good. I think hand hate in general is very strong right now because, you know, there's a lot of decks that are trying to leverage the 1 ring, and as I mentioned, the disparity in quality of those hands where they have the ring and they don't is huge. So being able to peddler and snipe opposing 1 rings is really, really powerful. And there's also a number of other decks, you know, as I mentioned, there's the Ratted Rabbit combo deck, and obviously hitting the hand against the combo deck is really strong at breaking up the combo. There's also, you know, ramp decks like the Croaky's ramp deck that's obviously quite popular right now, and being able to use Juggernaut Peddler to hit their top end threats like Atraxa and Cityscape level is really good. Now obviously giving the opponent a Juggernaut isn't ideal, particularly when you're not playing an aggro deck, but this deck can deal with Juggernaut fairly easily, right? We have so many small creatures that can block. We have Orcish Bowmasters that can deal with it single-handedly. If we have Orcish Bowmasters alongside a 1-power creature like a Cursebound Witch, we can just flash this in response, deal a damage to the Peddler, and then just block with the Amass token and the Cursebound Witch. Obviously, as I mentioned, Shambling Ghast is nice as well because it can deal 2 damage, so all you need is another 1-power creature to get rid of it as well. So we really don't have too much issues dealing with a Juggernaut. And then once we are ahead, if we have used Peddler to clear the way for our own 1 ring, we don't mind using a Rite of Oblivion on a Juggernaut either, you know, once we're already ahead with the 1 ring. So Juggernaut Peddler is really, really sick at, you know, disrupting the opponent's game plan and, you know, clearing the way for our own 1 ring, particularly important against the blue decks because counterspells are pretty punishing against cards like Diabolic Intent, 1 ring, Shieldred, and Eternal Wanderer. So having Peddler as a way to just get rid of their counterspell to clear the way for our 1 ring is really huge as well. And the main reason why I'm running Peddler over something like Break Expectations in the main deck is because it's a creature, and obviously with 4 Diabolic Intent, 4 Rite of Oblivion, it's a real disaster if we don't have a creature to sacrifice these. So I really want a very high creature count of small creatures to be able to sacrifice the Rite of Oblivion and Diabolic Intent, so we always have good sacrifice fodder for it. And then, as I mentioned, we've got Eternal Wanderer here as a one-of. So this is here, you know, kind of as a dual purpose, like I mentioned. First of all, it's very good if the opponent has gone wide. I felt like it was very, very important to have a card that can deal with wide boards if the opponent has managed to get off to a fast start. Though you could consider running Sunfall instead. I think that's definitely defensible, and it being 1 mana cheaper is pretty relevant. So if you wanted to run Sunfall in the main over Eternal Wanderer, I think that is completely fine, you know, that'll be a decent swap. But the main reason why I've gone for Eternal Wanderer here is that it's also just another top end threat that can help us win the game, right? You don't really want to rely entirely on Shieldred plus the 1 ring, because if you're up against a deck that has a lot of single target removal, that is kind of an unreliable way to close games out. So having Eternal Wanderer is just another top end threat that can just close games out. It's also just nice because if we already have Shieldred plus the 1 ring and we draw another Diabolic Intent, you want to have another top end threat to get. And Sunfall, obviously, when you have a Shieldred in play, isn't that good. So having the Eternal Wanderer to get as just a way to keep pumping out tokens and close games out is really nice. So I definitely think you need at least a one-of to deal with wide boards, and from my experience, Eternal Wanderer has been the best main deck option for that anyway. Then in terms of the mana base, we've got 26 lands here, which I would definitely not advise going any lower than 26. Finding your 4th land on curve is so important in this deck because we're so reliant on 1 ring plus Shieldred. It's particularly with Diabolic Intent, right? You really don't want to be stuck on 3 lands and then have to decide between going for Diabolic Intent for 1 ring or having to Diabolic Intent for a land is so bad in most situations. Now, if you already have the 1 ring, you know, say you go Shambling Ghast, Diabolic Intent and the 1 ring, and you need to find that 3rd land, that is a defensible spot to find a land, but it's an absolute nightmare to be in a spot where you have to Diabolic Intent for the 1 ring and you don't have that 4th land, because if you miss your land drops, it's a disaster. So don't go any lower than 26, that's really important. Outside of that, though, we do have some decent ways to dig towards lands. As I mentioned, Shambling Ghast can also produce a treasure to kind of mitigate missing that 4th land sometimes. And we have 4 Forsaken Crossroads, where the scry to try and dig us towards lands is really important. I don't think you really want to go any higher than 26. First of all, for space considerations, I'm not really sure what you would cut for an additional land. And outside of Shielded and the One Ring, the curve of the deck is pretty low, so you probably will end up flooding out if you go any higher. So 26 has definitely felt like the sweet spot to me. Then in terms of the lands themselves, as I mentioned, Forsaken Crossroads, very good, the scry at helping us, find lands if we need, and scry them away if we don't. And obviously is just good fixing as well. In white-black, we don't have the fast lands, unfortunately, and Shattered Sanctum can be a little bit annoying when we do want to curve out 1 drop into Intent in some situations, but we play with what we're given. We don't really have that many good white-black dual lands, so we're running the pain lands and the slow lands here because that's the only real options that we've got. Then outside of that, we've obviously got 1 Iganjo, 1 Takanuma as just utility lands that are free to run, and then 4 copies of Mirex has been so sick in this deck. First of all, because, as I mentioned, we do have some cards that aren't great into counterspells. I think Intent, Shielded, and One Ring are all risky to play into counterspells, particularly if you don't have a Peddler. So having 4 copies of Mirex, just to maximise your chances of finding that first one, gives you just a really strong game plan against control, because if the opponent is constantly holding open counterspells against you, I'm often just pretty happy to just pass, keep making Mirex tokens, and then if the opponent ever does tap out to answer our board or play one of their own threats, then we get a window to resolve our One Rings and Shieldreds. So Mirex is such an important card to be able to beat the blue decks. It being able to produce tokens is also very nice with Rite of Oblivion and Diabolic Intent. If the opponent's running a very interactive deck and they deal with our early creatures, then we can often end up with Diabolic Intents and Rite of Oblivion stranded in our hands. So having Mirex as a way to pump out tokens to ensure that we have creatures in play for our sacrifice effects is really nice. So Mirex, you really want to find that first copy. So 4 has felt really good to me. So that's the main deck overall. As I mentioned, I think One Ring plus Shielded is definitely the most powerful thing to be doing in the format right now. And because of Diabolic Intent enabling us to find them consistently, particularly getting a turn 3 ring online with Shambling Ghast is so good. And then Rite of Oblivion just acting as a catch-all answer to anything ensures that once we have One Ring plus Shielded online, we have answers to whatever the opponent plays, no matter what permanent type it is. So moving on to the sideboard now, as I mentioned, we have a lot of one-offs here to be able to tutor off the Diabolic Intent. So I'm going to go through the one-offs first, and then we'll have a look at the cards that I'm running more than one of. So Reprieve is here as just a nice counterspell, well, kind of a tempo counterspell against decks like the Ramp deck, for example. Basically any deck that has powerful top-end threats. So once we're in a position where we're ahead and we don't want to lose to something like an Atraxa, we can just Diabolic Intent for Reprieve and just have a way to stop their top-end threats, which is really nice. Then we've got a single copy of the Ran of the Third Path. So this is mainly here for a matchup like Anvil, for example. If the opponent only has 1 Anvil in play, then we can go turn 1 Cursebound Witch or Shambling Ghast into turn 2 Diabolic Intent, tutor up the Loran, kill their Anvil, and then we have a threat in play as well, which is really nice. So mainly here for Anvil, but just, any matchup that's running artifacts or enchantments. If you're up against the Cabaretti Revels deck, for example, this is a nice one to have. Then we've got a single copy of Pithing Needle. So this is mainly here for Anvil as well. Obviously, we don't want to Pithing Needle the ring because it's such a key part of our deck, but Pithing Needle, Oniko Anvil, or Obnixis is really nice. And then you could also consider bringing this in against Planeswalker heavy decks as well. And then we've got a single copy of Unlicensed Hearse. Obviously, this is mainly for graveyard decks. Now, there aren't that many graveyard decks right now, but I still think Reanimator is a viable archetype, and I've seen some other random graveyard decks knocking about as well. So Unlicensed Hearse is just nice to have access to there as well. Then we've got a single copy of Divine Purge. So this is really nice, first of all, against Anvil as well. If the opponent only has 1 Anvil, then I typically like tutoring for Loran. But if they get off to a fast start with multiple Anvils, then being able to go, Shambling Ghast or Witch into Diabolic Intent, tutor the turn 3 Divine Purge is such a blowout in that matchup as well. And then is also just very good against any low-to-the-ground creature decks. There are a decent number of creature decks I've come across that are mono-red or mono-white, just trying to apply pressure against the ring decks. So having a way to just tutor up a turn 3 sweeper against those decks is really nice as well. Then we got a single copy of Liliana of the Veil. So don't bring this in against any Orcish Bowmasters deck, because Liliana is pretty terrible against Bowmasters. But if the opponent's playing a deck with, kind of expensive single creatures that isn't playing Bowmasters, then this is a nice option to have, because obviously being able to tutor this and then go Liliana minus, force them to sack their big creature is really nice. And then also against blue-white control, if they're not running black for Bowmasters, this is a nice card to have access to there as well. If the opponent taps out, you can go for, Intent, tutor up Liliana, and then just play Liliana on turn 3, which is pretty difficult for them to deal with unless they have Fateful Absence. Then we got a single copy of Legions to Ashes. So this is really nice as a catch-all answer that doesn't require a creature in play. So obviously Rite of Oblivion is really nice as a main deck catch-all answer, but the times where you want to tutor Legions to Ashes is if you need an answer to something and you don't have another creature, right? So say you have Shambling Ghast into Diabolic Intent and you need to answer, I don't know, a Leyline Binding or just whatever creature the opponent has in play, maybe a Shielded or something like that, and you don't have another creature to sacrifice to Rite of Oblivion, just being able to Diabolic Intent for a Legion to Ashes to deal with that is nice. And then the extra text on this is actually relevant against the ramp deck because of Herd Migration. So you want to bring this in against ramp as well because it deals with, you know, Atraxa, Cityscape Leveler, Leyline Binding, and also against Herd Migration, you can target one of their beast tokens and it just exiles all of them. So kind of acts as a sweeper against Herd Migration, which is really nice as well. And then the cards that I'm running more than one of, we've got 3 copies of Sunfall here, which is very, very important against the Joda decks, or just any creature decks in general, to be honest, but specifically against the Joda and the Rattata combo, this is such a sick card. I played a ton of Joda recently, and I do think the deck is very strong, but I just don't think that deck has a good way to beat cards like Sunfall, so we're playing it here as a 3 of because that matchup can be difficult without it, but if you do resolve a Sunfall against the Joda decks, it's basically impossible for them to recover from that. And then, as I mentioned, also very good against the Rattata combo. Again, they really struggle to deal with exile effects. That's why we've got the Stone of Urek in the main deck. So having Sunfall here is just a way to sweep their board there is really nice. So any creature deck you want to bring this in, but mainly against Rattata and Joda. And then we've got 2 copies of Farewell, which is, first of all, good against Anvil. I don't typically like bringing in 2 copies against any deck other than the ramp deck. Farewell as a 2 of is here specifically for the ramp deck because initially, I was running the Angel, I can't remember what it's called, basically the Angel that stops them playing cards ahead of curve, but that card is only good if you have it exactly on turn 3, and this deck is capable of going over the top of ramp, as weird as that sounds playing a mid-range deck, but because we have cards like Sunfall, even if they resolve like Atraxa into Leyline Binding into Cityscape Leveler, if you Farewell their whole board and then exile their Leyline Bindings to get back stuff like the One Ring, that's a real way to go over the top of them. So Farewell as a 2 of has felt really good as a way to just recover against the ramp decks if they do get off to a decent start. And then obviously, as I mentioned, very good against decks like Anvil as well. I've come across Selesnya, the Enchantress deck as well with Hallowed, Haunting, and Farewell is just a really good card in those matchups as well. So typically Farewell, I only like bringing it in as a 1 of, as a tutor target for Diabolic Intent, because obviously 6 mana is quite expensive, but against the ramp deck, having the second copy of this to just maximize our chance of drawing it is really nice as well. So, then almost forgot, we got Break Expectations here as well. So this is really nice as just additional discard, right? Specifically against decks where we want that. A lot of matchups, I swap Stone of Urek for just a single copy of Break Expectations. I think the first copy has a lot of value in a lot of matchups because we can tutor it off Intent. Say we don't want to give the opponent a Juggernaut, or we only have access to 3 mana. Using Intent to tutor up a discard spell if we're worried about a specific card in the opponent's hand is pretty nice. But specifically against very control-heavy decks like Azorius Control, having the 3 copies here is really nice because we do have a number of cards in the main deck that aren't that good against them, so having 3 copies there is really nice. Now, typically, I don't like bringing this in against Ramp because there is a card in the spellbook, I believe. Yeah, hold on, I went past it there. Replicating Ring is really bad to give the ramp deck. So if you go Break Expectations and then hit one of their ramp cards like Topiary Stomper or Invasion of Zendikar, if they then just get a Replicating Ring, that's so bad. So I don't like bringing this in against the ramp decks, but specifically against blue-white control and stuff like that, Break Expectations is really, really solid there because, as I mentioned, counterspells can be good against Intent, One Ring, and Shieldred, so having ways to get rid of their counterspells is really important there. So that's the deck overall. I've been having a ton of fun with it. I think Diabolic Intent is a really sweet card that has definitely been underexplored in this format, and because of the tutor effect on this, the deck is really, really flexible. If the metagame changes and new decks pop up, there's a ton of good answers in the format, so you have real flexibility in the sideboard for stuff that you can tutor off it. And then outside of that, I just think this deck is the most consistent One Ring Shieldred deck. I think Juggernaut Peddler is really good against opposing ring decks as well, so the deck has felt really good, and also just feels like it has good game plans against all of the top decks in the format right now. So that's the deck overall. Definitely let me know in the comments if you've got any questions about the deck at all. And next time I've got some gameplay so you guys can see the deck in action. As I mentioned, give me a shout in the comments if you've got any questions or comments about the deck at all. And I hope you enjoyed the gameplay. Big up. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, this hand looks good to me. Right, we got Peddler on turn 2. Bowmasters and shielded as well with the mana to cast everything. So yeah, definitely happy to keep this one. And we got a lot of good top decks as well, right? Ring is obviously great. Intent can find the ring, and we've already got good creatures to sacrifice for it. And Peddler on turn 2 is sick against so many decks in the format right now. So yeah, definitely happy to keep this one. Just got to hope we didn't draw any more lands though, obviously. Yeah, let's see what the opponent's on here. So Crossroads on black could be a number of things. Wow, they go untapped, which is unusual. Okay, Mind Spike, I mean, that's completely fine, right? Drawing another land off the top there isn't great, but we do get Peddler down on turn 2, so now we get to see what the opponent's up to. Okay, they're on blue-black control. Double make disappear, so I'm not sure we really want to take that. The ring is definitely an issue, but we've got Bowmasters and shielded, so I don't think it's that bad. Honestly, I'm kind of tempted to take Bowmasters because they don't have the third land for Kaito or Tasha. And even if they find the third land, we've got Bowmasters and shielded to pressure anyway, right? Like I said, we're not concerned about the ring because we have Bowmasters and shielded. And if we allow them to have Bowmasters, that really slows down our ability to apply pressure here. And I feel like from their hand, the onus is definitely on us to apply pressure. So I'm going to pass it back here. Obviously, we could go for intent, but we know they've got make disappear. So, okay. So the card they draw off the top is Go for the Throat, which does slow down our aggression somewhat. But if they don't draw a land here, they're in real trouble. Okay. They do draw a land, which is kind of awkward for us, but yeah, if they go for Kaito here, no matter what mode they pick, it's good for us, right? If they minus, we could either kill the token or the Kaito. If they plus, we can just Bowmasters in response and get a big amass token, which does mean that we can't attack the Kaito because it phases out, but this does also enable us to resolve Shieldred next turn, which is pretty huge when the opponent just has a bunch of counter spells and the ring in hand. So they choose to plus here, which is an interesting choice. Maybe going to pitch the Juggernaut here, I'd imagine. But that's good for us because we get 2 triggers off the Bowmasters straight away here. We can then resolve Shieldred while they have 2 counter spells in hand, which is really nice. And we get to apply pressure here. So if they do go for the ring, we have both Shieldred and Bowmasters in play already here. So I feel pretty good about this spot. And obviously, the opponent needs the 4th land to really apply anything else to the board here. So they do have Tasha here, and they can potentially minus and get Juggernaut Peddler, getting rid of our intent, but drawing Mirex is actually really good in this matchup, right, because it gives us something to do even if we do flood out more. So interesting spot here. We could obviously target the Kaito with Orcish Bowmasters, but I think I'm probably more incentivized to go face here, right, especially while they have One Ring and Tasha in hand. So we got a 3-3 and a 4-5. If they go for Tasha and plus, do we have lethal here? Because presumably if they have a removal spell for Shieldred, they'd probably use it now, I'd imagine. So I assume we're going to get the 2 life loss off their next draw step. So they're effectively at 6 unless they kill Shieldred here. So if they do go for Tasha and plus, we can attack face, but that would only deal 5 damage plus 2. So we're 1 short of lethal if we attack directly, right? So they do go for Tasha and they do plus. So just let me think about this again. We obviously can't attack... Well, we can attack Kaito with the Bowmasters. And I think I'm just going to play Mirex here. So the question is here, right, I just want to double check. If we go face, we're 1 short of lethal, so I don't think that's correct. We can just attack down the Tasha here with Shieldred plus the amass token, right? That's 5 damage. And then we can attack the Kaito with the Bowmasters, because Tasha only gives -1/-1 if you attack Tasha or them directly. So... And then main phase 2, we could go intent or Mirex. I'm not sure what's better because we don't really have a great target to sack to intent here, really. We don't want to sack Shieldred, obviously. We don't want to sack Bowmasters while they have One Ring in hand. And we really don't want to lose a 2-2 while we're applying pressure either. But either way, so we get to attack down the Tasha and the Kaito. I think I'm just going to ship it back and use Mirex here. Just because I don't really want to sack anything that I've got in play. And we are applying a lot of direct damage to the... we're applying a lot of pressure. Basically stopping them casting the ring here because we have Bowmasters and Shielded. Now, opponent having Bowmasters of their own is a bit annoying, right? That makes the One Ring a little bit better for them, although they are already at 6, so... But that does get 2 blockers in play, which is very good for them. I mean, thankfully, we can go for a Mirex token here. Be interesting to see what they do off the Kaito as well, because if they plus, they go down to 4. If they minus, they lose the Kaito, but they do get another blocker in play. I mean, I think either one of those is good for us, right? We either deal more damage directly. I mean, if they find a removal spell here, that's going to be rough. If they kill the Shieldred and then plus the Kaito, that's going to be bad, but... I feel like if they had to go for the throat or something, they would have used it already. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here. Okay, they plus Kaito. I guess they're desperate for a removal spell, right? So that puts them down to 4. Okay, it doesn't look like they have anything, so we can make a Mirrex token here, which is great. And then we'll see what we draw. Wow, okay, Shambling Ghast is a good one, because we can go Shambling Ghast, Diabolic Intent to kill the Bowmasters off the Shambling Ghast death trigger, right? And I want to use the Mirrex. Now, I assume they're probably going to casualty the Make Disappear, sacrificing the Bowmasters here, but just in case they don't, I'm going to tap the Mirrex manually so that we can fetch a removal spell for this 1-1 here. Or there's a number of things we could get in this spot, but I assume they're going to casualty. Yeah, so they casualty the Make Disappear. And then we can just attack all, which is, you know, that should just be game, I think, right? Even if they block with Shieldred, they go down to 1, and then they just, unless they've been sandbagging a go for the throat for the draw step, we should just win. Like, it makes no sense for them not to use the go for the throat instead of the Make Disappear there, so I assume we should win here, hopefully. Oh, wow, they have the Otawara, okay. So the opponent isn't dead, but I don't think there's anything they can draw here that gets them out of this, right? I mean, they can minus the Kaito, but yeah, we still have a lethal attacker in play. So, against Dimir control, we definitely want the Stone. I think we just swap Stone of Urek for Break Expectations here. Now, against certain control decks, I do like bringing in slightly more Break Expectations, but Dimir typically... Just debating whether I want to bring in more. I mean, typically I bring in more Break Expectations against Azorius control. Against Dimir, they tend to have more creatures, so... I think I will bring in a second one, though. I normally bring in 3 against Azorius, but against Dimir, where they have more creatures, I don't think I'm going to bring in that many, but... Yeah, I think I'll trim the 4th Curse Balmwitch for another Break Expectations, because it does seem like they're running a decent amount of counter spells, and I imagine they'll probably board into more post-sideboard, although they didn't see the ring from us, so they don't really know exactly what we're up to either. But yeah, Dimir controllers felt pretty good overall, right? We have access to discard spells. Mirrex is really good if the opponent is just holding open mana. Even if the opponent resolves a 1 ring, which I assume they're probably going to be running. Although we didn't see it. We only saw stuff like Tasha, but Rite of Oblivion acts as a way to just punish them for tapping out for their rings. So yeah, this matchup has definitely felt pretty good overall. In general, against Dimir, I normally just like trimming a Stone of Urek for a single copy of Break Expectations, but most of the Dimir decks that I face tend to be more mid-range focused than control. You know, this opponent is running more counter spells, so leaning more heavily into control. So I think 2 makes sense here. And then against Azorius, where they typically don't, they have more sweepers and counter spells, and less creatures like Bowmasters and Rusko and stuff like that. I typically like bringing in 3 Break Expectations there, just because getting rid of counter spells and sweepers like Farewell is very important. So, but yeah, this matchup has definitely felt pretty good overall. I think, Bowmasters, Peddler, discard spells is really punishing, as is Mirrex. So Mirrex is really nice because it allows us to just play go without tapping out into their counter spells, and then when they tap out for something, that then opens up a window for us to resolve our top end threats. So, okay, this hand looks pretty sweet, right? We got Break Expectations into Peddler, potentially into Intent to try and find a ring, and hopefully, Break Expectations into Peddler should have hopefully got rid of their counter spells so that Intent and Ring can resolve. So definitely lead on Break Expectations here, see what they got going on. Wow, looks like they got a response. Wow, they got Spell Pierce. So if they got Spell Pierce into Make Disappear, this could be pretty rough, because then we won't have a creature to sack to Intent or Rite of Oblivion, so I really hope this resolves. Okay, it does resolve, that's pretty good. So we'll Peddler here, see what's up. Okay, they flash in Bowmasters in response, which is potentially an issue if we do end up going for the ring, but it shouldn't be too much of a concern. Okay, and we go to Sniper Shieldred, that's pretty huge. But yeah, I mean, honestly, Bowmasters isn't too much of an issue. Once you got ring in play, we could potentially find ring, play ring, and then, sack something to Rite of Oblivion to kill the Bowmasters. So I think I'm just going to go for Diabolic Intent here. Not going to attack because I don't want to offer the trade. If I offer the trade and then we lose the Peddler, we then, in the same position where Intent and Rite of Oblivion aren't live anymore. So I'm going to get the ring here, get to scry. Okay, scrying away a land here is a pretty big game. That's an important scry there, I think. Oh, wow. They have a second Bowmasters. Okay, that's a bit of a problem. So now we are kind of getting punished here for going for the One Ring. But we still have a decent amount of draws here to get us out of this. So definitely just going to slam the ring here. We're under a lot of pressure on the board. So just going to slam the ring and uptick here before they get a chance to flash in another Bowmasters. Wow, okay. Bowmasters is the sick one. Because if they don't find a counterspell here, we can Bowmasters to kill their Bowmasters. And then Rite of Oblivion to kill their other Bowmasters to then unlock the One Ring. Now, that is a bit awkward because we're taking a lot of pressure from the Juggernaut and the 4/4. But it's a start, right? So definitely going to manually tap the Mirrex here. Really got to hope they don't have a counterspell. Okay, it's giving away priority, so it looks like they don't. So now we can Rite of Oblivion, kill the Bowmasters, and at least we have our Bowmasters in play as a blocker. If we can draw another 1-drop here, that would be so good. Okay, perfect. So now we have 2 chump blockers for their 2 creatures. And now I feel like we're in a good spot again, right? As long as they don't have a removal spell here, we can chump block both of their creatures. And then, you know, we can draw more blockers. This is the great thing about having a bunch of cheap creatures in the deck, is that even if you're under pressure on board, One Ring is really good at drawing you into more blockers. And, okay, perfect. So, oh, well, I was going to say perfect curse spell, which found us an unwilling ingredient, but I kind of think I want to go for Witch's Vengeance here, because that's just a way that we can kill the Juggernaut, which is pretty nice. Wow, and we found Shambling Ghast. That's really nice. So just got to hope we don't have a Bowmasters here, which they don't. That's great. And then definitely going to lead on the Witch's Vengeance here just to get rid of that Juggernaut. The Juggernaut. And then we can go for both Shambling Ghast and Bowmasters here if we wanted to. And they were the starting player. I don't want to use the Caves of Koilos because I don't want to take unnecessary damage here. You know, when we've got a One Ring on 3 counters, taking unnecessary damage is going to be a potential issue. Okay, they're Scolding. So I'm definitely going to main phase this Bowmasters here. We need these blockers in play to not take 4 off their Amass token. And if we wait, they could potentially draw Make Disappear. So definitely going to do it now just to get 2 blockers in play. So they attack. We'll just block with the 1/1 here. And hopefully they don't draw a Shielded. Although we do have Rite of Oblivion as an answer, so... Agent is pretty good. We definitely do want to answer that. But we do get to draw a bunch of cards here. Okay, nice. So not bad, not great either. But I still think we're in a good spot here. And I think since we, 4 counters on the One Ring is going to deal us a lot of damage. So I think this is a spot where I'm going to Rite of Oblivion to kill their Agent of Rafine, and then we can just get the One Ring going again. Okay, we drew another 1-drop, which is nice, although it doesn't really matter while we have the protection. Now, we could have waited to kill the Agent of Rafine because we do have protection from them activating it, but they can do it during our upkeep on the following turn, so I think it's worth getting rid of it now. Okay, Tasha's not a bad top deck. The minus doesn't really do too much here, though, right? We can just give them a Shambling Ghast. And we can just kill the Tasha with Rite of Oblivion as well, so not too concerned about this. I think in this spot, though, I'm going to go for Diabolic Intent into Shielded, because our life total is a little bit low. What do we want here? Witch's Vengeance and Cauldron are both decent. I think, with our hand at the moment, I'm not really sure that we need a sack outlet. So I'm just going to go for the Witch's Vengeance as another removal spell. And then we can go Shielded. We can activate the ring, gain some life back, which is pretty clutch at this point. And then just going to go for Juggernaut Peddler. We could Juggernaut Peddler ourselves, but I think all the cards in our hand are pretty good here. And we also don't want to reveal, we're giving away a huge amount of information if we do that. So even if the opponent pluses Tasha here, we have 2 Rite of Oblivions. Oh, wow, that's a pretty good draw for them. So I think the opponent's probably incentivized to minus the Tasha here, because they know that we're just going to use Rite of Oblivion on it next turn. Again, with the ring going, I don't want to take any unnecessary damage, so I'm just going to chump block with the Peddler here. So we want them to plus. Okay, they do minus, which I definitely think is the correct line for them there. And I'm just going to give them a Shambling Ghast. Ghast really doesn't do too much for them at this point, I don't think. So here I'm going to Shieldred. Even if we don't draw anything good here, we can still Rite of Oblivion the Tasha if we want to. Wow, we didn't draw anything. I mean, that's fine though, right? We're still in a really good spot here. We're back up to 15 life. We have a Shieldred back in play now. The opponent would need to get another lucky top deck to be able to kill it. I think we still want to kill the Tasha, even though Bowmasters is probably good against them. I do imagine that they're running the ring. I do just want to deal with the Tasha before they can minus and get another creature. So discarding 2 here. Definitely don't want the Caves and probably don't want the 3rd Mirrex. Yeah, I feel pretty good about this spot. The opponent would need to get another lucky top deck to get back into it. Yeah, okay, opponent just scoops it up, so that felt pretty good. Okay, so we're on the play here, which is great. And yeah, definitely happy to keep this one. Right, we've got Shambling Ghast on turn 1. And then on turn 2, we could potentially flash in Bowmasters to kill our own Shambling Ghast to produce a treasure token. And then as long as we can find our third land, we can then just go for a turn 3 ring, which is a potentially good line. So we'll have to see how it plays out. And obviously it depends on what the opponent's playing. If they're on counter spells, then maybe not. Okay, turn 2 halfling. And we draw intent, which is interesting. So I think I'm going to attack first here. There's no way they block because we can just kill the halfling with the Shambling Ghast death trigger. And then I think I'm actually going to go Diabolic Intent for a land, which isn't a line I'm normally thrilled to take, but with 2 rings in hand, I think I'm happy to go for this. And I assume we're against Croaky's ramp deck from what they've played so far. So the only thing we really need to be worried about here is Reprieve. So if they pass with white mana open, then we might have to take it a little bit slower. But if they just go like Stomper or something, or tap land, then I'm very happy to just go for the ring. Okay, so they pass without attacking, so they must have Herd Migration here. That's the only thing that really makes sense. And they've got priority, so I'm like almost 100% sure they've got Herd Migration. But either way, we get the ring in play, which is huge on turn 3 on the play. That's nuts. Even though the opponent had Halfling, we've had a pretty good start here. Definitely going to activate during our main phase before the opponent has Leyline Binding mana open. Okay, another tap land, so wow, very slow start from the opponent. Happy to see that for sure. So opponent still has priority. The fact they didn't use Herb Migration makes me think they must have a lot of ramp for them to want to hold on to it to maybe hardcast, but they also haven't played any ramps so far, so I'm a little bit confused about exactly what they got going on in their hand. So we could obviously go for Peddler just to see, but considering the opponent has such a slow start here, I think I'm just going to flash in double Bowmasters during the opponent's upkeep, and then if they want to use Reprieve, they have to tap out during their turn to do it. And double Bowmasters during their upkeep takes out their Halflings, so if they have another tap land, for example, they can't go for Invasion of Zendikar. Wow, and they cycle a land, so now we get to really punish them. We get to flash in double Bowmasters here, kill the Halfling, and make get 4 Bowmasters triggers here, which is pretty nasty, considering the opponent basically hasn't ramped at all so far. So they draw a card, we get 2 more Bowmasters triggers, and, obviously Peddler is going to be good in this matchup, but you really want to be using Peddler to hit Attractor and Cityscape Leveler, and the opponent's so far away from those cards that we really don't need to worry about that at the moment, I don't think. So I'm going to lead on Peddler now. We probably could activate the 1 ring first. I don't think it makes too much of a difference. Wow, opponent just scoops it up. I'd be interested to see what their hand was there. Maybe it was, reliant on Halfling potentially. So against ramp, we definitely want Reprieve as a one-of, which is really nice when we're ahead. 2 Farewells, this is the matchup for it. And then maybe, I definitely want Legions to Ashes for sure. Just going to make some trims, I think. Bowmasters isn't very good against them, even though it was last game. And then I think it's between Intent and Break Expectations. I think Break Expectations is reasonable as a one-off to shooter, but the issue with Break Expectations is that one of the cards out of the spellbook is a ramp card, which plays pretty well into their game plan. So if we end up needing to use it to discard early, they can get, I think it's called the Replicating Ring. So I think I'm pretty happy sideboarding like this maybe. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe we do want the one Break Expectations, but I don't know, Break Expectations is only really useful over Juggernaut Peddler if you only have exactly 3 mana. And I think we'd only really be searching Break Expectations as the opponent approaches, casting Attractor or Cityscape Leveler, at which point we could probably just get the Peddler anyway. So this hand isn't great, but I think it's borderline. But I don't want to mulligan it, really. Like, Bowmasters isn't great against them, but as long as we can keep hitting land drops, this hand's decent. Drawing a 1 ring is good here, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is a mull on the draw. Not 100% sure. I think it's close, though. So here, I think I might actually be interested in using Bowmasters on the Shambling Ghast, because if we can find a land off the top, that enables us to go for turn 3 ring again. So I think if this resolves and they don't use Reprieve, I'm definitely going to target the Shambling Ghast here, because it's pretty high upside if we do draw land. They just go for a Reprieve. Wow, and we do miss a land drop. So yeah, this hand was a sketchy keep for sure. Maybe I should have mulliganed this. But again, the opponent has more of an interactive hand by the looks of things, although they could just go 4th land into Invasion of Zendikar, so Wow, no Topiary Stomper as well. They must have another interactive hand. Maybe they got another Reprieve here, which would be a little bit rough when we're missing land drops. So yeah, I'm definitely going to target the Shambling Ghast here, because again, you know, we're in a decent spot where if we do draw a third land, we can just go for the ring. Wow, are they going to Binding the Shambling Ghast? Potentially. No, they go after the Bone Masters. I mean, I think that's pretty good for us, right? They're tapped out of Reprieve now, so if we do draw a third land, perfect. Now we can just slam the one ring. We don't need to worry about Reprieve, because Reprieve, when we're using a treasure token and missing lands like this, is really bad for us. But opponent's now tapped out, which means we don't have to worry about Reprieve. So now we get the one ring online, which is pretty sick. And again, opponent has like a fairly slow start. I mean, we also did have a slow start because we missed land drops, but there's the invasion though. So they're threatening what, both Cityscape Leveler and Atraxa now, which is a little bit scary. So, I mean, we'll definitely draw off the ring first to see what we hit. We find a Shieldred, so I'm kind of tempted to slam the Shieldred while they don't have Reprieve up, but if they do have Cityscape Level, that's a little bit rough. But even if they do, we have Legions to Ashes as an answer, and I feel like we do want to start applying pressure, right? They'd need either... I guess they could also have Atraxa into Binding, but I want to start applying pressure. If they don't have a way to kill the Shieldred, that puts us in the driving seat here, really. Okay, so they don't have level, they do have Atraxa, so gotta hope they don't find a Binding here, which they don't. Okay, that's ideal. So this is the kind of spot I really wanted to play this Shieldred in. If they don't have Binding and they don't find one off the Atraxa, we can just kill the Atraxa and start applying a ton of pressure, because this is definitely a matchup where you can win the long game, but this matchup is a lot easier when you can get an Atraxa unanswered in play and start applying pressure. So I'm going to lead on the Peddler here just to see what else they got going on. Another Atraxa and a Stunfall. I'm going to take the Atraxa. Stunfall is obviously good against our board here, but, you know, I feel like we can beat a Stunfall fairly easily. They just sweep our board and get a 3-3, but we have such good ways to recover, whereas Atraxa enables them to, you know, potentially just get a completely new hand. So even though Stunfall is good against us, I definitely prefer going for, you know, getting rid of the Atraxa here. Interesting. They go for Binding, though, so maybe they're not going to go for Sunfall. Potentially. I feel like Sunfall is probably the better line for them there. I guess they can go Stomper plus Juggernaut, though, which is, you know, that's pretty reasonable. And then they hold on to the Sunfall to answer whatever we recover with, so it definitely makes sense. But they tap out of Reprieve mana here, so we get to resolve another Shieldred, which is pretty huge. So we get Shieldred in play, activate the one ring again, draw 4, gain 8, which is obviously pretty sick. And now we've got a lot of options here. I think I'm just going to go for 2 1-drops. You know, get 2 Shambling Ghasts down, just so we don't have to discard as many cards to hand size, and then we can, you know, pretty cleanly kill both of their creatures in combat now. The Shieldred's going to be dealing damage, so opponent's kind of in an awkward spot here where they might have to use Sunfall now anyway, even though they've committed to the board. And they're obviously forced to attack with the Juggernaut as well. So we definitely don't want to let them get another creature here. So I think I'm just going to triple block the Juggernaut here, because I feel like they're probably forced to go for Sunfall main phase 2. And we want to give them not only do we not want to give them a big incubation token, so getting 4 creatures off the board lowers the incubation token. We also get 2 treasures off the Shambling Ghast, which we wouldn't get if they use Sunfall, to unlock more mana for next turn, because we're going to be drawing 5 off the ring. So opponent does go for Sunfall, which I think they kind of needed to in that spot, right? And then still have an unknown card in hand. I mean, I think I'm going to flash in the Bowmasters here, because opponent's already down to 5. We put them down to 4 off this Bowmasters. They can obviously block with the 3-3, but I feel like just applying pressure here is good. Even if they block, it's not the worst thing. We could obviously draw a way to kill the 3-3 as well. So, you know, if we find a Rite of Oblivion, that'll be great. Okay, gonna go for the Juggernaut Peddler here. Kind of, well, see what their last card is, but potentially force the action on that Reprieve in hand. If they do go for Reprieve as well, we get an extra Bowmasters trigger here, which is nice. So they do go for Reprieve, we get another Bowmasters trigger. Wow, yeah, opponent just scoops it up. So that felt pretty good. Okay, so we're going second tier. And yeah, I think I'm pretty happy to keep this one, right? We've got Ghast into Peddler, and then You know, we have got 2 Ghasts, which can potentially help us ramp into the Wanderer if we find a way to kill them, maybe with the Sacrifice Outlet. So definitely lead on the Ghast on turn 1 here, and then Peddler on turn 2, particularly if the opponent is just on straight Dimir control, will be really nice. And drawing Mirrex here is huge as well. If we are against a more heavy control deck, Mirrex is one of the best cards in our deck for this matchup. So, I mean, assuming the opponent is on Dimir control, hopefully we'll see off this Peddler. I mean, if they counter it with Make Disappear, we know they're on control. But if not, we get to see what they're up to. Wow, Glorious Gale. Huh, that's not a card I've seen much. Interesting tech, though. So, going to lead on attacking again here. I mean, again, we're not in a great spot. We're not applying a ton of pressure quickly, but I think in this matchup, we're not actually in the worst spot because we can go Mirrex next turn. Going to set some stops just to represent Bowmasters, because if we don't set stops, it's just going to be obvious we don't have anything here. So definitely important to set stops here to try and bluff the Bowmasters. And then next turn, I feel like we're in a reasonable spot here because we can go Mirrex, and then if the opponent is just holding open removal or counter spells, we can just keep making Mirrex tokens every single turn. And if they do tap out for something like the Ring, we have the Rite of Oblivion here straight away that not only gets rid of the Ring, but also makes us a treasure token, so we can potentially ramp into the Eternal Wanderer. They do have Siphon Insight, so they do have good stuff to do with their mana, even if they're holding it open. So that makes our Mirrex plans slightly worse, but I mean, once they flash back the Siphon Insight, that will hopefully be the last one they've got. So yeah, if they're playing Siphon Insight, I imagine they're more on control than mid-range, but you never know. A lot of the more mid-range builds are also running Siphon Insight, so okay, I mean, another land isn't great, but if these Shambling Ghasts don't die and we want to cast the Eternal Wanderer, we do have all the mana to do it now, so definitely going to lead on attacking first here. I imagine the opponent's just going to hold open mana. And then I think we just pass back here and Mirrex at the end of their turn. They're probably going to Siphon Insight again, so not like we're wasting their mana, but you know, they'll have to do something eventually here, right? Especially because the Mirrex tokens will start racking up the poison damage if they do just go Draw-Go the whole time. Now, the unfortunate thing here, I mean, if they tap out for something that isn't the One Ring, we don't get to punish that too hard. You know, if they have a Rusko or something, we can obviously Rite of Oblivion one of the 2 permanents, but the ideal thing here would be to have our own One Ring. So if the opponent does tap out for something, then we have, you know, the One Ring to punish them for doing that. Because we've already seen counter spells. I have to imagine they do have, you know, they are probably on a somewhat controlling variant from what we've seen. Not 100% sure though. Wow, so they hit a One Ring off our deck, right? That was one of the cards from Siphon Insight, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But thankfully we do have the Rite of Oblivion as an immediate answer, so we can make a Mirrex token here. And then Juggernaut Peddler's not a bad one, but unfortunately, very important to note. Wait, we get protection, right? Hold on, I don't know if that's a visual bug or not, but Arena UI is showing that we have protection. I don't feel like that should be the case. I feel like the opponent has to get the protection off that. Because what I was going to say is casting Juggernaut Peddler while the opponent has protection from the One Ring targets yourself, which just reveals your hand, which is an absolute disaster. So I was kind of tempted to go for the Peddler there because the UI made it look like it gave me protection, but I'm pretty sure that's probably just a visual bug, right? The opponent should get protection even if they steal our ring, I'm pretty sure. So here we could obviously jam the Eternal Wanderer, but having it hit by a counterspell would be a disaster. I really want to sandbag it as long as possible here. Okay, so opponent does have Bowmasters. I assume they just take out one of the Mirrex tokens. But we can still go Peddler plus Mirrex, which is decent. You know, hopefully hit their most impactful card and still have mana open to keep making tokens. So I'm going to play Peddler here. Could obviously have another Glorious Gale, but if they're relying on Make Disappear, then we obviously get to resolve this, which is nice. So we'll see what's up on their hand. Shielded Bowmasters double go for the throat, so no more counter spells, which is good. I think we're just going to take the Shielded here. I don't really care about Bowmasters while we don't have our own One Ring. They can obviously flash in the Bowmasters again here, but kind of risky for them to attack into Shambling Ghast because we can obviously just use the death trigger to kill one of their Bowmasters. And it's obviously really good to know their hand here as well, because unless they happen to draw a counterspell off the top, we can just potentially jam the Eternal Wanderer next turn, which seems pretty sweet. You know, if we can get that to resolve, that's pretty huge. But yeah, we'll see what the opponent does here. I mean, with 2 Go for the Throats and Juggernaut in hand, yeah, I was going to say there's a reasonable chance they just kill the Peddler to start trying to apply pressure and get aggro here, particularly while they have that Juggernaut in hand. But if they do that, that does then enable us... Oh, wow, they have Shieldred. And that was... Wow, so they hit pretty well off the Siphon Insights, because that was the other card they hit. So we can just go for Wanderer here, though. And actually, this is a pretty sick spot for Wanderer, because we can minus and keep our Mirrex token alive, and then use the Shambling Ghast Death Trigger to kill their last creature, right? So Shambling Ghast dies. We can then use the Shambling Ghast Death Trigger to kill their token. And now we're in a really good spot, I think, right? Now we've got our own Shieldred. Now we've got an Emperor in play. I mean, the downside of Emperor here is that if they have another Bowmasters, they can kill it. But they've already gone through at least 2, right? So I feel like we should be able to untap here unless the opponent gets pretty lucky. Okay, sweet. So now we get to start using the 0 on Wanderer. And if the opponent is playing a controlling deck, I feel like we're in a pretty good spot here, right? We don't even have to worry about the 1 ring because we already have Rite of Oblivion online here. Definitely going to sack the Mirrex token to Rite of Oblivion away the Juggernaut because we don't want to be forced to chump block here. And I think at this point I'm pretty happy to just keep making tokens off Mirrex. I don't want to jam Shieldred into the Go for the Throat that we know they have. We kind of want to bait it out on the 2/2 first, right? And now I feel pretty good. As long as they don't draw Bowmasters or draw Bowmasters off a Siphon Insight, that would be kind of rough. Because they have had pretty good Siphon hits so far. We'll have to see. Okay, they do Siphon again. I guess they're trying to dig for Bowmasters because they know that we're running it, I think. Fingers crossed they didn't hit it. Oh, wow. Okay. That's pretty annoying because I was hoping to ride this Eternal Wanderer to victory, but I still feel in a reasonable spot here. They're tapped out, so we do get to resolve a Shieldred, but if they have a Go for the Throat or that other card that they've stolen is a Rite of Oblivion, that's going to be pretty rough. So we activate Mirrex here. Okay, we draw a Shambling Ghast, which obviously isn't the best. With a Shieldred in hand, I think I'm happy to attack here. Particularly if that last card they've got is a Rite of Oblivion. I mean, I feel like they probably wouldn't block if that was the case, but get to resolve Shieldred while the shields are down. You know, plays around counter spells nicely. And we get Shambling Ghast in play as well, which is pretty sweet. So we are kind of out of gas here, but we're in a good position. If they can't find an answer to the Shieldred, I feel like we should, you know, be in a really strong spot here. Because even if they have the ring, wow, that last card they hit was a Rite of Oblivion. So they have pretty good hits off the Siphon Insight. Although that's a pretty good draw. Just got to hope they don't have another counter spell. So get to cast the Shieldred here, and it resolves, and they don't have a removal spell. Okay, sweet. That's really good for us, obviously. They just ship it back. Wow, okay. I can't complain about the opponent's luck when we drew a 1 ring off the top as well. That's pretty sweet. So definitely going to attack first, see if they got any response here. They do have a Bowmasters, so that does punish our ring slightly, but at least they're flashing it in now. I guess actually, I don't know. I don't know if it's great for... I don't think it makes a difference when they flash it in, really. But okay, they didn't go after the Ghast, which makes sense, because we would just use the Ghast Death Trigger to kill the Bowmasters here. So they block. So I'm definitely going to jam the ring now. They could obviously have Make Disappear, but we haven't even seen that yet. And I think I'm just going to activate it, honestly. You know, they do get an Amass trigger here, but I want to get the ring rolling. We have a Shielded in play, and we have Rite of Oblivions here. So we can just cleanly answer the Bowmasters next turn. Actually, I should have manually tapped because now I'm in a spot... Wow, they kill the Ghast. So we just get to freely kill the Bowmasters here, which is great. Maybe they have a Shieldred's Edict in hand. But yeah, I should have manually tapped because if I'd left the Mirrex untapped, we could have got a free token here, which could actually be very relevant with these Rite of Oblivions in the graveyard. So that was definitely a punt on my part. But opponent just scoops it up. Okay, sweet. So thankfully it didn't end up mattering. So against Dimir, I always like replacing Stone of Erect with at least 1 Break Expectations. It doesn't look like they're on that heavy of a control build though, so I think that might be all the changes that I make. You know, if they were running fewer creatures and more counter spells, then I think I'm more interested in maybe running 2 or potentially even 3 if they're very counterspell heavy, but looks like they're mainly creature removal. They've obviously got Bowmasters and Shieldred of their own, so I don't want to over sideboard here, because that's the other risk with this deck, right? For Diabolic Intent and Rite of Oblivion to be consistently live, you do need to keep your creature count high. So I don't generally like cutting, trimming more than 2 or at max 3 cheap creatures from the deck. And if I do trim 2 or 3 creatures, I usually trim 1 intent as well, because the risk of not having a target for intent is really bad. Not only do you often have to mull hands where you have Rite of Oblivion, intent, and the 1 ring, for example, and no creatures, but drawing them off the top when you have nothing to sack is also really bad. So you really need to keep your creature count high post sideboard, which means you can't afford to over sideboard that much. I think Ramp is probably the matchup where I sideboard the most, but I can't keep a 1 lander, unfortunately. Wow. Second, so we have to go down to 5, which is pretty rough. This isn't awful though. We can potentially just go Witch into intent to try and find the ring. Maybe I'm actually we're going second, so I think I'm probably supposed to keep that Crossroads over the Takenuma. Wow, so opponent leads on Dreams of Steel and Oil. We lose the Curse-Bound Witch, so now we're already at the mercy of the top of the deck. Okay, that's a good one though. Obviously, Bowmasters gives us a sack outlet for the intent. So if the opponent doesn't have a way to stop the ring, we can potentially just flash in the Bowmasters, intent for ring, and then just play that. Okay, Peddler's a nice draw here. So we get to go Peddler on turn 2, see what's up in the opponent's hand. I mean, we do need to... I feel like we need Ring to recover from Mull to 5 here, but Ring can definitely do that. Okay, so the opponent goes for Siphon Insight, which is fine. So we get to see what they've got going on. Get to see a bit more of their deck, which is important. Go for the Throat Disdainful Strike. So I definitely think, like I said, our route to victory here on a Mull to 5 is definitely with the Ring. And so I definitely want to take the Disdainful Strike. I don't really have any creatures that I'm too worried about them killing with Go for the Throat, right? We don't have a Shieldred here, so I'm going to lead by attacking with the Peddler here, and then definitely going to flash the Bowmasters at the end of the opponent's turn, and then I guess we could also go Intent during our turn here to try and find a... try and find the ring for next turn. I guess the opponent might think that they know we have intent and we might not have other creatures, so them using Go for the Throat there makes a bit of sense. But we have the Bowmasters here, so we can flash that in, thankfully. And now we have another target for the intent. And then also, if we don't draw a land, it's not too bad, because the risk going for intent on the Peddler there is if we miss our 4th land drop and we just have 1 ring in hand, we have no pressure in play, unfortunately. So this is kind of a rough spot. I'm gonna use the intent now so that we don't lose the 1/1 to an opposing Peddler. They could obviously have a counter spell here, but I feel like we have to go for it. And I feel like, again, we could get a land here, but I feel like that's not a winning play, right? I feel like we're on a Mull to 5. We're a little bit behind in general, so I feel like we have to go for the higher upside play here and just hope that we draw a land off the top. I don't really see another way to win, because obviously we could go for a Shattered Sanctum and then play Shieldred, but if the opponent has a removal spell, we're just completely out of gas at that point. The opponent does hit Juggernaut Peddler, so I assume they take the ring here, which is a little bit annoying, but I still feel like that play was correct, right? Because if the opponent doesn't have Peddler... okay, another ring. We really wanted to find a land there, but if we're not going to find a land, a ring is the thing I would like to hit the most, so the opponent doesn't know about our second Bowmasters here, so I kind of doubt they're going to be attacking with the Peddler here. Or during their turn, I mean. Wow, they bind to Secrecy Peddler, so that's a nice line, because now they get to take the 1 ring that we've drawn off the top. But having said that, we do have a lot of powerful creatures. We just really, really need to hit our 4th land now. So maybe, I don't know, in hindsight, I obviously wish I'd taken the 4th land now, but I still feel with the information we had at the time, it's probably the correct play. Okay, so now we know exactly what the opponent has off the Siphon Insight, which is nice. I'm going to flash in the Bowmasters now because, we could obviously use it to prevent the opponent from attacking with a Peddler, but we really want to draw the 4th land, and if we do draw the 4th land here... Oh, we didn't. That's a bit annoying. But if we had, I want to get the Bowmasters in place so that we can then cast the Juggernaut or the Shieldred. So obviously, if I'd known I wasn't going to draw the 4th land, I would kind of wish I'd held on to the Bowmasters. But again, we have to take the winning lines here rather than, playing scared. And that was definitely the better line there, I think. Okay, so can't afford to play around the second Bowmasters here. I think we just want to offer the trade with the Amass tokens because we don't want to take too much damage. We do obviously have the Shieldred in hand, but if the opponent's sandbagging a Go for the Throat, which I reckon they could well be. Okay, we hit the 4th land finally. So now we can play our own Juggernaut to trade with theirs. And Go for the Throat doesn't kill Juggernaut, which is pretty important in this spot, right? Because if they do kill the Juggernaut here, we're under a lot of pressure. So thankfully, if they're relying on Go for the Throat, it doesn't affect the board state here, really. They can kill our Bowmasters, but that doesn't really matter. So definitely going to take the trade here. Don't want to take 5 unnecessarily. And I think I'm just going to go for the Shieldred here, right? We could go for another Juggernaut, but, we've got to play the Shieldred at some point. And, yeah, they do have to go for Throat, so maybe Juggernaut was the better play there. But, if they don't happen to have the removal spell there, I'd rather get Shielded and play earlier, sooner rather than later, so that we can start gaining life so it's less problematic. And because, it'd be a disaster if they... oh, wow, that's rough. I was going to say it'd be a disaster if they happen to draw a counter spell, before we played the Shieldred. Okay, Curse Spell Mage is a reasonable draw here. So now we have a cheap creature to use with Rite of Oblivion. Oh, yikes. Okay, they have Stern Scolding. I wasn't expecting that. So... now we're in a really rough spot. I feel like if we could kill the ring with Rite of Oblivion that turn, we're in a good spot. But now the opponent gets to untap with the ring, we're probably going to lose this. But, this game was pretty close considering we were on a mull to 5 and we missed our 4th land a number of times. Wow, okay. I think we're probably just going to lose this one, though, unfortunately. But, on a mull to 5 in a kind of grindy matchup like this, it's not that unexpected. So here... I really don't want them to take the Shieldred. I feel like we have an outside chance if they don't have Shieldred. So I'm gonna put it like this. Give them an enticing other pile so they hopefully don't take the Shieldred. And if they do take the Shieldred, they get a land with it. So it's not as much gas. But yeah, we'll see what they take. But yeah, with 1 ring plus Ransom, even if they take the other pile, they get Ransom plus Viconia, which is still really solid, right? So... yeah, I'd be very surprised if we managed to win this one. We still have the Planeswalker, what's it called? The Eternal Wanderer, which might be able to help us, but we're stuck on 5 lands here, so yeah, this game was kind of scuffed because of mulling to 5 and then, missing land drops. The opponent has played pretty well though. So we go down to 7. Yeah, I honestly don't know what we can draw here to get us out of it. I might as well just play the Peddler to see what the last card in their hand is here. But I very much doubt we're going to win this one. We can take the Shieldred and hope they die to the ring damage. So maybe I'll play it out for another turn or 2, but... we'd have to draw perfect and they'd have to draw just lands, basically, so... Okay, they cast Dreams of Steel and Oil, which doesn't really do anything here, but yeah, we need a miracle to win this game. To be fair, right, if we'd drawn the 4th land or they hadn't happened to hit Juggernaut Peddler off that first Siphon Insight, I actually think we've got a reasonable chance this game, because if we get a, I'm just going to scoop it up. If we get an early 1 ring down, that's definitely the way that we recover from mull to 5. Overall, though, I think I'm pretty happy with how I sideboarded. Just got to hope that we don't have, any more 1-landers in our opening hand. But yeah, I think that was a good sign that game felt reasonably close at the beginning, even though we did mull to 5. I think that's a pretty good sign. And to be honest, I think these, the Dimir decks obviously vary quite a lot in terms of how mid-range or control focused they are, but the matchup has definitely felt pretty good overall to me. I think us having answers for opposing 1 rings, us having Murex if the opponent's more control based, and us being able to assemble 1 ring more consistently is pretty nice. This obviously is pretty not great, but it does have lands. I think this is a little bit better, but we really, really need to keep hitting land drops here. Thankfully, the Crossroads can scry us, which is really huge, but we really need to hit land. So honestly... okay, that was a huge bottom, but yeah, I don't know, there was definitely an argument to keeping that first hand, especially if the opponent's playing discard spells. Just having more resources is very important, I think, and, we do get a scry, and we do have enough lands to cast everything we draw off the top, so maybe I'm supposed to keep that first hand. Yikes. Missing land drops already is really bad, especially when we have so many 4-drops in hand. I mean, this highlights why I think you can't run any fewer than 26 lands in this deck. Because, you know, for spots like this, we are running 8 4-drops, and they are the most important cards to cast in the deck. So, I mean, if we can keep hitting lands... Okay, there's the 3rd land. That's huge. So, as long as we can keep hitting lands here, I think we've got a reasonable chance. Especially because this land is Mirrex as well. If the opponent does play reactively... We can just sandbag the Mirrex, activate it every single turn, and then when they tap out, use the One Ring. Okay, there's Siphon Insight, which is fine, I think. Well, obviously it depends what they hit, but... So there's the 4th land. Okay, we hit the 4th land. That's huge. The opponent is playing pretty reactively here, though. I mean, I'm kind of half in half a mind to just slam the One Ring here, but I feel like that's probably bad, so I'm just going to pass and use Mirrex. They obviously can use their mana for Siphon Insight, and they also do have Sauron's Ransom, so maybe it's not great to just not do anything during our turn, but the One Ring is such an important part of our game plan and our win condition here that I think I'm going to wait a little bit, right? Try and find a better spot to cast it rather than just jamming it, because... I assume they do have counterspells. You know, we've seen Disdainful Stroke. They probably have Make Disappear, so I really don't want to just jam it here. Might get punished by that. I mean, they did have Bind to Secrecy, so they would have been able to counter the One Ring anyway, but I think this is still fine. We already have the 4th land, so I think we can just, you know, cast a bunch of creatures here, right? They assumedly take the One Ring, but that does give us a Juggernaut, and their deck doesn't seem that well equipped to defend against Juggernaut, really. So I think I'm just going to jam the Juggernaut here, right? We know they're reliant on Go for the Throat as their main single target removal, which can't hit the Juggernaut. And, you know, Peddler doesn't cleanly block the Juggernaut. They need another creature in play to be able to block it. Wow, they do have Shieldred that they hit off our Siphon, which is obviously pretty good. But we do have Rite of Oblivion here, so... I feel like we probably... Well, I'm going to attack with the Juggernaut first here. I'd rather save the Rite of Oblivion. I honestly don't mind taking the trade with Shieldred here. There is maybe an argument to going for the Rite of Oblivion first. They do take the trade, interestingly. So maybe there's an argument to going for Rite of Oblivion first. But I really want to go for Peddler here. And we don't have... Unfortunately, because of Mirrex, we don't have enough mana to do both. Okay. They have a second Shield in hand, so... That's another reason why it's nice to go for the attack first, because they presumably blocked there because they have another Shieldred in hand, and now we've got rid of it, it becomes, you know, much worse of a block for the opponent. So the opponent attacks. I'm definitely going to just flash in Bowmasters here and trade with the Amass token. There is maybe an argument to holding Bowmasters to kill Juggernaut, but with 2 Shieldreds in hand and only 4 lands, I think this line makes way more sense. Wow, the opponent... Wow, that is surprising. I did not expect them to go for that. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So they have Diabolic Intent, so I wonder... Maybe they would have also used Go for the Throat on Peddler had we just offered the trade. I assume they would have done if they're willing to go for the Throat and a Amass token. But yeah, I don't know what they're going to get here, right? Because we have 2 Shieldreds. They can maybe get a counterspell for the Shieldred. They could get the One Ring, but we already have Bowmasters in play and Shieldred in hand. So One Ring doesn't seem very good here. And for it to be effective, they kind of need that last card in their hand to be the 4th land as well. Trying to think what else they could get here. I mean, maybe they're running a sweeper potentially, but black sweepers aren't very good in Alchemy in general. Just trying to think what the best black sweeper is. I mean, you know, Languish isn't legal, Extinction Event isn't legal, I don't think. So, wow, and they didn't have the land either. So, we do draw One Ring, which is pretty sick, but I feel like, I feel like I'm just going to jam the Shieldred here, right? We're trying to apply pressure. If the opponent did tutor up the One Ring, Shieldred makes that significantly worse, which it looks like they did, okay. And they also, you know, we've seen Bind to Secrecy as well, so there's a chance that they're just holding on to that, and having the One Ring countered when Shieldred would resolve is really bad. So, yeah, very happy that we went for the Shieldred here. And even though we are pressuring the ring here, I do want to Rite of Oblivion the ring, just in case they do have a sweeper of some sort. I think I'm going to sack the Curse Bound Witch. Maybe there's an argument to going for the Shambling Ghast first here, but you know, there's a lot of good stuff that we can hit off the Witch spellbook that we can play this turn. So interesting choice here, whether we want to go for Trespasser's Curse or not. I think I'm going to go for it. Obviously can't cast it this turn because they have protection. And it's also worth bearing in mind that Trespasser's Curse does fall off if they play another ring, because protection gets rid of the enchantment. But we're getting to the point now where the only way the opponent's going to win is by clearing our board. And Trespasser's Curse, when they're on 6 life, is going to put a lot of pressure. Okay, opponent just scoops it up, so we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're on the play here, and yeah, this hand looks decent, right? Obviously, we don't have any top end, but really strong interactive early game. We can also use the Crossroads to try and scry towards more action as well, potentially. Which, you know, on the play, Crossroads will definitely scry on turn 1 here. And there's no rush to play out the Shambling Ghast on turn 1, because we don't really have a sack outlet or anything like that. So, going around the Crossroads, definitely on black, so that we have double black for Shieldred. There is maybe an argument to holding the 4th land so that we can cast Ring or Shieldred off the top, but we are a 26 land deck, so, you know, I think we're likely to draw another land in the next few turns, which we do, so very happy that we did bottom that land. So get to play Juggernaut Peddler on turn 2, see what's up in the opponent's hands. Interesting. Kai's Reconstruction, Double Inquisitor Captain, and Patchplate Resolute. So I imagine this is a Nazgul deck, because we've seen white-black and you know, Captain and Reconstruction, the only decks I really see that C play in is Nazgul, and also the Patchplate Resolute works with the Nazgul, I guess, because it puts counters on it. So opponent ships it back, and it doesn't look like they have priority for something here. So going to lead on the Juggernaut Peddler here, just to see what else they got going on. And then we do get another scry off the Crossroads, which is really nice. We have the 4th land, so hopefully we can dig towards either a ring or a... Okay, they are on Nazgul for sure, so got that right. So definitely going to take the other Inquisitor Captain here. Maybe an argument to taking the Kyler's Reconstruction, but, you know, they're pretty far away from 5 mana, which is the, you know, kind of the scary amount. Okay, we find a Shieldred on the top, which is really nice, so definitely going to keep that one. And then we can either go for Shieldred or potentially double Bowmasters, depending on what the opponent does here. So they do cast the Nazgul, so we're definitely just going to attack here. You know, if they decide to block, we can just pick off the Nazgul with Bowmasters. So they do block. Definitely go for the Bowmasters here. And then we can either go Shambling Ghast or Bowmasters again. I think Bowmasters is more valuable in hand here, because if they play another Nazgul, we want a way to pick it off. Okay, there is the 4th land, so really hope the opponent doesn't have a 5th land, or they can potentially go for Kyler's Reconstruction here. I mean, the good news since we hold on to the Bowmasters is that we can attack with the Ghast, the Amass Token, and the Peddler here, and no matter what they block, we can kill the Juggernaut with the Bowmasters. So they do pick to block the Peddler, which does mean we're being mana inefficient this turn, right? We don't get to use our 4 mana on Shieldred, but I feel like it's worth it. You know, that Juggernaut is an issue we'll have to deal with, so might as well deal with it now while, you know, using Bowmasters there is definitely good for us. They do find the 5th land for Reconstruction, though, which is, you know, obviously really good for them. So they do get a Nazgul and a Patchplate Resolute here, which is fine. Okay, ring off the top is perfect. So now we get to get the ring in play, and we already have the Shieldred here. Hopefully we find another land to get us close towards the Wanderer. Okay, we missed on the land drop, but I think that's fine, right? Ring in play, plus the Shieldred in hand, should hopefully help us pull ahead. Oh no. Well, this just... I guess it gets an extra creature in play, but while we have protection, it basically just reveals the opponent's hand. I guess if they just want to get the creature in play, that's, you know, reasonable, but... I feel like they maybe should have waited on that, but I guess if they don't cast the Peddler, they're not being very mana efficient, right? I guess if they went... I can't remember. Yeah, we went on the play, so they could have potentially held the Peddler and gone for 2 patch plates that turn. Maybe they forgot about the protection. Either way here, definitely just going to jam the Shieldred and activate the 1 ring. Hopefully we can find another land here. Oh wow, opponent just scoops it up. But yeah, we definitely got in a commanding position that game, so I think we want sweepers here, you know, particularly against the Inquisitor Captain Kyler's Reconstruction deck. Definitely can cut the Stone of Erech, and then I feel like I want to trim some creatures, so probably going to trim an Intent as well. And the Bowmasters, and then I think we can trim a Cursebound Witch as well. Maybe Not 100% sure which is more important out of the Witch and the Bowmasters. I mean, Bowmasters, I don't think they'll have any targets to pick off for 1 mana, but, you know, it still produces 2 bodies, and as we saw last game, we can pick off Nazguls with it if we're attacking with the Juggernaut Peddler, so still feel like it has decent applications in the matchup, but, you know, I very much doubt they're running either 1 toughness creatures. I guess they could also be running their own Bowmasters. It wouldn't surprise me, so we have to mulligan that hand. This hand is better, but double Mirrex is a little bit annoying. I think we either put back Sunfall or Shieldred here, and I think because we're so far away from it, I'm going to put back the Sunfall, but that is a card that we do want to have access to in the mid to late game. So here, I think I'm going to scry here. I don't think there's any real rush to play the Curse-Bound Witch on turn 1, since we don't have a sack outlet on turn 2. You know, obviously if we drew a Rite of Oblivion then, you know, we might have wished we played it. So opponent does lead on the Peddler. I assume they take the 1 ring here. Wow, they go after Shieldred, so maybe they have another Peddler potentially. We do draw an Intent, so maybe that was a reason to go for Curse-Bound Witch on turn 1, but I still feel like the Scry is so valuable if you don't need to cast the Witch. So opponent attacks, definitely not going to block yet, because we want to have the creature available for Diabolic Intent. Okay, yeah, makes sense. They did have the second Peddler, so probably just going to take the ring here. Although we do have Diabolic Intent to find the ring now, so... Wow, they take the Intent. That's kind of a surprise. Maybe they have a third Peddler. Oh, no, okay, so they have Pithing Needle, so I assume they just named the 1 ring here then. Yeah, okay, so 1 ring is named, but... You know, this is another really nice upside of having Rite of Oblivion in the deck. We can just use that as a way to get rid of Pithing Needle. We also have Divine Purge as well, so that's the way that we can temporarily answer it. So again, not going to block here, because if we do draw Rite of Oblivion, we want to have access to Curse-Bound Witch to sack it. Okay, so opponent plays Nazgul, which is fine. I mean, thankfully we have the Juggernauts here, which can, you know, come down as a really big blocker, prevent them from attacking with the Peddlers. Although I guess the Peddler does have the ring tempts you, so they can attack with that Peddler, because we're not going to block with the Witch, I don't think, you know. While we still really need to have access to Rite of Oblivion, you know, we definitely don't want to be using Rite of Oblivion to sack a Juggernaut, for example. So I do have another Nazgul. I mean, thankfully, unless they have a removal spell for the Juggernaut, they're probably unlikely to attack with the Nazgul, but we're definitely on the back foot here. You know, not having something to play on turn 3 there was pretty rough. So they get a loot off the Juggernaut Peddler, sorry. Pitch a land. And hurt. We can obviously go for the Juggernaut Peddler here, but I think, you know, we are definitely on the back foot here. We probably just need to get another blocker in play, or they're just going to start freely attacking with those Nazguls. So I'm just going to play the second Juggernaut out here. I mean, if we can find removal here, there's a chance that we can potentially race, because outside of them blocking with the Nazguls, it doesn't look like they have that many good ways to... Oh, wow. So they must have boarded out some amount of creatures for their captain to not fire here. I mean, that's obviously great for us. Yeah, I guess since they already have 4 creatures in play, they must have kept like the borderline amount of creatures in their deck for it. I mean, thankfully we still get protection from the ring here, so we're obviously forced to attack with the Juggernauts. Inquisitor Captain is a really good blocker for the Juggernauts here, so I imagine they block with the Captain. Not sure if they'll block with anything else, because they're definitely winning the race here. Yeah, like I said, thankfully we can still cast the ring as a defensive option here, but I really dislike having these Caves of Koilos when our life total is this low. Go for the throat. I think I'm going to let them have that. I don't want to give them another creature, right? Because go for the throat can't kill the Juggernaut here. I mean, obviously can kill our other creatures, but I'm much more scared of them just casting another Juggernaut on this board state than I am of them, you know, potentially just killing one of our smaller creatures with go for the throat. But yeah, I mean, even if we can find a Rite of Oblivion here, it's going to be rough, because we have to take a damage off the Caves of Koilos, and then we have triple Mirrex as well, which is kind of frustrating. Wow, we did draw it. So that does unlock the ring here, but I don't know how much that helps, really, honestly. Maybe I'm supposed to sack the Juggernaut here, as crazy as that sounds. to keep 2 blockers back, but I feel like the way we're winning here is by racing. I don't know, maybe that was a misplay. Maybe I'm supposed to attack with the Juggernaut. I assume they let the damage through and then sack the Juggernaut to have 2 blockers back. Because go for the throat is going to take out our other blocker. Yeah, I think that was a misplay on my part. Because I don't think there's anything great that we can really draw here. Oh, okay. I mean, if we drawn another Swamp, we could have potentially gone Bloodhunter Bat plus Shambling Ghast, so... Yeah, I potentially punted this game by not... I probably should have attacked first with the Juggernaut. I think there's a decent chance they let the damage through. Then main phase 2, I could have used the Rite of Oblivion, sack the Juggernaut to get rid of the Pithing Needle, unlock the ring, and then I would have had guaranteed an extra blocker in play, but I also wouldn't have had the Bloodhunter Bat available here if I'd done that. I don't know, it's close because... If we'd drawn a Swamp instead of a Plains here, we could have gone Bloodhunter Bat plus Shambling Ghast and at least survived here, I think. We can use Rite of Oblivion, but I don't think that's good enough. So yeah, we Bloodhunter Bat, go back up to 10. But I presume they go for the throat of the Bloodhunter Bat. And then even if we block the Nazgul, we're taking 3 off the Nazgul plus 4 off the Peddlers is 7. Then we're taking an extra 1 off the 1 ring. And, you know, we'd have to draw into another 1 ring to survive. And them not have anything else here, right? If they have another removal spell for the Peddler, we just lose. So yeah, maybe punted, maybe not. I'll have to watch this one back and see. I think our mana base did more damage to us this game than anything else. Right, if one of these Myrixes or one of these Caves of Koilos was just a regular dual land, I think we'd be in a much better spot. I mean, having said that, we still have the Sweepers, right? So we can potentially draw a 1 ring, although if we have to activate the 1 ring here, we're just dead to the burden counters. So we'd need to naturally draw Sunfall or draw a 1 ring off this 1 ring activation. So we're still in the game here, surprisingly. Okay, so don't draw a Sunfall. We have to find a 1 ring here. Yikes, we don't find it. So I think that's game. Maybe I could have played slightly tighter on that turn where I sacked the Cursebound Witch, but still not 100% sure if that was a punt or not. Just trying to think if there's any way we can win. I mean, one way we can win is if they just misclick and not block here. So we'll attack first and see what they do. Yeah, presumably they just chump block. And yeah, with these Caves of Koilos being our only real black sources outside of the Crossroads, they've... I don't know how much damage they've dealt us over the course of this game, but I definitely feel like we could have survived at least another turn here if we hadn't had the Pain lands here. So I don't know. Maybe I misplayed. Maybe it was down to getting unlucky with the mana base. But yeah, okay. Lose game 2, but I feel pretty confident in this matchup, right? And maybe if we kept that Sunfall in hand in the opening mulligan, we would have been in a good spot. Because if we had Sunfall there, we're in a really sick spot. So maybe that was a slight mistake in terms of the mulligans, but overall I feel like we should be pretty good, right? The really sick thing about this deck is that, you know, a lot of decks that I've tried have rough matchups against the very creature-heavy decks like this or the Joda deck, and Sunfall is just so unbelievably good in these matchups, so having access to it post-sideboard really, really improves these sorts of matchups. So unfortunately we didn't find any of our sweepers that game, but I feel like we should definitely be favoured in this sort of matchup. Our opponent does have Pithing Needle for the 1 ring straight away, but you know we don't have the 1 ring in hand, so oh wow, why did I have to curse myself saying that? Shouldn't have said it. So there is definitely a potential argument to playing Mirex to play the second Cursebound Witch out there, but with the Shieldreds in hand, in case we draw another Plains, I want to have the Mirex to cast the Shieldred on turn 4 because we don't have double black yet. So opponent has the Peddler, they get rid of 1 Shieldred, but that's fine. Okay, we drew the second black land, so that's good. Get the second Cursebound Witch out, which should hopefully stop them attacking with the Peddler. Hopefully they don't have a second one. Oh, wow, they do. So presumably we lose the Shieldred again then. You know, they're probably just happy to leave us with the 1 ring because they've got the Pithing Needle in play. But again, you know, we can get aggressive here. We're on the play this game. So we can just get these Juggernauts down and force them to deal with it. Okay, Sunfall's a pretty nice option to have here. So definitely just going to stand the Juggernaut here and, you know, see what they've got. Okay, there's Inquisitor Captain. We'll see if it hits this time. Okay, it does. So Maybe they boarded more creatures back in. I mean, to be fair, when they cast it last time, they had 5 creatures in play already. Wow, Guardian of Gurapus, so that bounces the Peddler and presumably loses us the Sunfall here, which is kind of rough. And again, you know, Captain is a really good blocker for the Juggernaut, so even though I felt like we were in a decent position to start getting aggressive... Oh wow, that's a good draw. So I feel like I'll attack with the the Juggernaut first. If they block, presumably they block with the Inquisitor Captain, and then we could potentially go for Divine Purge here, maybe. That does then unlock the 1 ring, but again, I still feel like if we cast the Juggernaut here, we're in a reasonably, you know, we're still dominating the battlefield at that point, I think. They can obviously attack in the air with the 3/3, but they can't attack with the Peddlers, really. Okay, go for Reconstruction. I'm very glad that I saved this Divine Purge, unless they happen to hit... another Juggernaut Peddler, or I guess another Guardian of Gurapur is also rough here, right? Because they can, you know, bounce the Peddler again, get rid of the Divine Purge, which would be kind of rough. But yeah, Purge, obviously Kaiser's Reconstruction can only hit 3 drops, so as long as they don't hit another Peddler or a way to bounce it, yeah, so I'm pretty happy to see that hit, because now, even though we do Purge our own Witches, we get to sweep their entire board and keep a Juggernaut in play. Okay, another land's pretty nice. And the nice thing about this is it also gets rid of their Pithing Needle. So unless they want to spend their next turn or so getting Pithing Needle back in play, that then unlocks our 1 ring to start getting online, which is pretty nice. So even though we do lose the Cursebound Witches, that Divine Purge is obviously way, way better for us than it is for them. So I feel a lot more confident about this game now. I feel like we're in a pretty good position. They obviously can recast stuff. Oh, okay, they do have a Juggernaut Peddler, and they obviously know what our hand is as well, so they can obviously take the 1 ring, but it's going to be slow for them to rebuild the board, I think. You know, the tax on Divine Purge is very real here. Okay, they do have another Nazgul, but if they do end up needing to recast the stuff from Exile, I feel like all these Juggernauts should be able to race what they've got in play. Okay, so we find another land, which maybe I'm supposed to hold that before attacking, just so they have less information. But yeah, I feel like we're definitely winning the race at the moment. Wow, they let it through. So I'm just going to jam another Juggernaut here for sure. If we do find another land off the top, then we can go for Juggernaut and Cursebound Witch. But obviously we're hoping to find something a little bit better if we can. But yeah, I still feel pretty confident about this spot. Opponent does have a lot of stuff to recast, but with only 6 lands in play, there's definitely a pretty big limit on what they can do here. So they just go for another Nazgul. It enters tapped as well. So they can obviously... you know, give the Ring Bearer to the Juggernaut Peddler, which does loot them. And if they do cast another Nazgul, then they do get the 4th mode, which is going to start dealing us a decent amount of damage. Wow, we hit the Sunfall. That's pretty good. So we'll definitely attack here. They have to block, right? Or they're just dead. So they block with the Nazgul, which makes sense. And then they go down to 3. I think I'm just going to keep going with these Juggernauts here. I mean, again, they can recast... Maybe it's scary that, you know, maybe I'm supposed to go for the Sunfall, because them casting a Juggernaut Peddler here is going to be kind of rough. Or like a Guardian to bounce the Juggernaut Peddler, but, you know, I still feel pretty good about this spot. The annoying thing here is that we can't block the Juggernaut Peddler, and we're taking 5 off it because of the 4th chapter of the ring, or whatever it's called. So they get to loot. Wow, they pitch a Kyler's Reconstruction. Okay, that's scary. They must have a really sick card left in their hand then. So here we can attack and force the double block, but I feel with that Juggernaut Peddler on the 4th chapter of the ring, we should just go for Sunfall here because we want a big Sunfall token, right? If we attack first, then we're only getting a 1/1 token off the Sunfall, whereas if we do it now, we get a 5/5, which is pretty big. I wonder what the last card in their hand is. Maybe they have 2 Kyler's Reconstructions potentially. And we went first here, right, I think? So we can't, unfortunately, use our mana to turn the incubation token into a creature, but scrying here is really nice, I think. Yeah, getting rid of a land is really important, I think. So it looks like the opponent still has something, so the last card must be an instant. I was Bowmasters. I'm surprised they value Bowmasters more than Reconstruction here, though. I guess it does put 2 bodies in play to block the incubation token, but they didn't know that when they were looting last turn, so... Wow, they attack with both. That seems a little greedy to me, because... No, I mean, they can go Guardian, bounce the Bowmasters to get an untapped creature here, but the Guardian enters tapped. If we can find a removal spell for the Bowmasters, they just lose. I guess they feel like they need to just apply pressure and try and race here, because we do have a lot of good top decks. And we can obviously, if we don't draw anything, just cast both of these Cursebound Witches, so they might feel like they have to race here, so kind of makes sense. Because if they don't attack, we're at 8. If they do go for Guardian here, we go down to, what, it would be 7, and then they would have... I mean, I feel like it's lethal either way, right? Or it's like a 2-turn clock either way if they don't do this. So they do go for that line where they bounce and, you know, replay the Bowmasters, but wow, okay. Bowmasters off the top is a very good draw here. I mean, we have a lot of good top decks, but this just wins us the game straight away, right? We kill the Bowmasters, get the incubation token, so yeah, we got there, nice. Hey, back to rank 1, sick. Definitely going to be trying to push for rank 1 end of the season if I can, I think.